Good evening, everyone. It's Gina K from Gina K Designs, and welcome to Stamp and Chat. I'm so excited to see all of you here from all over the country and all over the world. I want to start by extending a very happy Thanksgiving Day to our Canadian friends. We hope that you had a wonderful weekend all together, and hoping that you got to have some family time even in the middle of this crazy global pandemic. Hope everybody got to eat some great food and that you had a wonderful fall weekend. Well, tonight we are going to be doing something a little different. Usually I always do card projects, and I will make a couple cards because some of what I'm going to show you actually requires me to assemble some cards. But the focus tonight is not on the cards, it's on the techniques. Tonight's technique that we're going to work on are different tips and tricks to make die cutting much easier for you. I see this topic come up a lot in our group where people will say, how do you get the white edge even? And I'm not sure how to do, I can never seem to get it to sit right when I put it in my die cutting machine. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can do it. One without a Misti stamping tool or platform, and one with. So that's the plan for tonight. Now tonight, we're all going to take a worry fast. We are going to take a break from grief, from anxiety, from worry. We're going to let all of that go for the next hour. Taking a break from worry and anxiety and grief actually helps your brain process it all better and more effectively. So we need to take a break once in a while. And, it's okay to feel moments of happiness and joy, even in the middle of a lot of anxiety, grief, and worry. You don't have to feel guilty about that. And I know that that's a big thing, because a lot of times when we realize that people are suffering or we have anxiety or even we're suffering, we feel guilty for enjoying things. It's okay to take a break and give your mind that little rest. And when you take care of yourself and you take this little break, it doesn't mean me first. It means me too. I get to have a little bit of downtime. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're all going to put our worry in a box and we can pick it up later. It's not going anywhere. It's going to wait for you, I promise. So let's have some fun. So tonight, I'm going to start with this stamp set. This is the Haunts and Harvest stamp set, but you can use any stamp set you want if you're trying these techniques along with me. Basically, you just want a nice clear stamp that has some coordinating dies that go with that stamp set. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the pumpkins for my first technique. Now, my first technique to get really super clean lines around your die cut piece, I'm going to do this with a regular old acrylic block, because I know not everybody has a stamping platform or a Misti stamping tool, and you want to be able to still get those perfect edges. So I'm going to use the 3 pumpkins image from the Haunts and Harvest stamp set, and I'm going to use a little bit of Gina K Designs Black Onyx ink to stamp this. And once again, I want to say welcome to everybody who's just joining me. We are doing die cutting tips and tricks tonight. So that is what I'm going to be showing. I'm not going to be showing some phenomenal card projects, but I am going to show you some card assembly just because that's part of one of the tips and tricks. Okay, so I'm going to just stamp this using some Black Onyx ink. So there I have my pumpkins. No stamping tool needed for this one. Let me just get my tidy towel here so I can clean this, because I'm going to want to use this again, this stamp. Okay, so now I'm going to get my die cutting machine, and this is tip 1, trick 1. Where'd my die cutting machine go? I should have had that close by. Here it is. All right, I'm going to just back up a little bit because I want you to be able to see all parts of this process. So I'm going to back up here, and hopefully you can see all of it. You don't need to see that end, but I want you to be able to see down here. Okay, so I'm going to start. This is the Spellbinders Platinum machine, but all of these tips and tricks are going to work just fine on any die cutting machine where you can cut out thin metal etched dies. All right, I'm going to start with the This is their A plate and then one clear plate. And I'm going to put that down into the machine. Now I'm going to use a piece of very, it's not super heavyweight. This is our medium weight cardstock and it is the Dusty Rose color. I'm going to place this on the Spellbinders machine and I'm going to cut out the die. I don't have to stamp it first, but if you want to stamp it first and you can try to line it up, you could possibly use that image and that's great. But I'm just going to cut out a template that I'm going to use over and over again. So I'm going to start with this one. All right, I'm going to try not to bang the microphone here because it's right in front of me. Okay, so I could put that away. In fact, you can use this one on the second technique I'm going to show you. All right, so now I'm going to take my die out of here and I am going to get my Tim Holtz scissors and I'm going to cut this just so that I don't have all that excess cardstock. So this is a reusable little template that I can use whenever I want to cut this out. Every once in a while you'll have to replace it because they do get a little worn and you are going to tape it. So now here is the trick for this. So you're going to lay your image down on your plate and then you're going to line up this negative piece so that all of the white lines look evenly spaced around the whole image. Okay, so I can see I'd like to shift it over a little bit. You can really play with this and take your time until it looks exactly the way you want it. Then I'm going to use a little bit of purple tape and I'm going to hold this template down onto that white piece of cardstock. And with the new purple tape, you really have to rub it to make it stick. And you can see it's sticking really nicely. Some people just kind of pat it down like the old purple tape because the old one was almost a little too sticky and people tried to, not make it rip the paper. So they would use a real light touch. But with this, you can use a much heavier hand. I'm going to line this up just a little better. And this is the beauty of doing this template is you can really take your time, no rush, and find the exact spot that you want to cut it. Okay. Now you're going to take the die and you're going to lay the die into the hole and you'll feel it snap in. Once you feel it snap in, it's going to cut exactly in the same spot as you're seeing when you don't have the die in there. And then you can use some purple tape to hold that down if you want, but you almost don't need to because the die does pop right in there and you can feel it click down. And then using your other plate, you can cut that out. Now that die is not going to shift because it's sunk down into that piece of cardstock. All right. So now I'm going to take this off. And there I still have my template. So my template's reusable. I can store that with my stamp set. And then I can pop that out and you can see I've got even placement all around those edges. See how easy that was? So the purple tape, we do carry the purple tape at Gina K Designs. You can pick it up there. It's also available at most of your local stores. It's available at some of the big box stores and your favorite big online stores as well. Okay, so that's the first technique. All right, and then I'm going to just save that for a future cut. Now let's go with the second technique, okay? We can even use that same template, I believe. Let's see. Okay. So now the second technique, I'm going to break out my Misti stamping tool. Let's see. The Fanciful Flourish die, that wasn't my die. That was a die by Cherry Lynn Designs, and they're not in business anymore, so we can't get that one anymore. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to get another piece of white cardstock here. I don't need a big piece. And I'll put it up here at the top. I can zoom in a little bit more on this one so you can see this a little bit closer. Oops, I think I'm zooming the wrong camera in. So when I switch, I'm going to be really close. I'll just sink down a little. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, for those of you that have the Misti stamping tool, what you want to do is you want to take that same stamp and you want to, ooh, that's wet. Let me get rid of the wet that's in there. I need a paper towel. Actually, I can use my tidy towel and just blot it up. Okay. So I'm going to lay that down and I'm going to stamp it onto my piece of cardstock. I think that got rid of the wetness. Okay. I'm going to use some of the black onyx ink again. And I'm going to ink up that stamp. And then I'm going to use my Chucky tool. Those of you, where'd my Chucky tool go? Oh, no, here it is. Okay. This is just helps me put pressure on it. My friend Chuck Meadows made this for me. And if you go over to our Facebook group, you can see a whole library of the ones that people made themselves. I think my magnet's too close. Let me ink that up a second time and stamp that again. Okay, there we go. All right, so now the next trick for this technique is to make sure that you do not take that stamp off of your Misti. Leave it on your Misti, all right? And leave this right here in your Misti stamping tool. In fact, just to be doubly safe, take a little bit of washi tape and tape it down so it doesn't move. Okay. So now I'm going to put this aside for a minute and I'm going to get my die cutting machine back again. Okay, and we'll back out a little bit again. Maybe I'll back myself out too of my front shot. Okay, so now this is super easy, this part. Let's say you're making Halloween treats or you're making little autumn treats for everybody at work. So what you can do is you can take a piece of white cardstock and you can just put your die on there. And I'm just going to cut the die out. No image, just cutting it out. There we go. I think I'll cut a couple more because I'd like to mass produce this. And I don't want to worry about having to die cut them all later. So you can keep going. And we'll cut one more, just so you can kind of get the idea of what I'm doing. One more. And I'll actually use these for some Thanksgiving cards. These are fun to do this way because you can, like, this is especially an especially good technique if you're mass producing holiday cards, Christmas cards. All right, so I've got a little pile of these. You can cut out absolutely as many as you want. Now let me move the die cutting machine away again, and we'll get the Misti back. Okay. All right, so here's my Misti. We'll zoom in again. And then I'm going to take that same little template that I made before, and I'm going to lay that down exactly where I want it. Okay. Now, if it's jumping around a little bit, like parts of it are loose, you can always put a little bit of, you can actually do this. This might be the easier way to do it. Let's see how it works. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of the Gina K Designs dot adhesive runner all over the back here, and that's going to get those parts to stay down. So we're going to find that perfect sweet spot where we want it to stamp. Okay. And then we're going to press all that down. So now we have an indentation there. So I'm going to drop my piece in that I want to cut into that little hole. And I'm going to ink up my stamp. And then I'm going to stamp it onto that white piece of cardstock. There we go. Let's do it again. So I'm going to drop that in there, and I'm going to ink it up. And I'm not worrying if they ink perfectly every time right now. I can always go back and stamp it a second time, but this is just for this demonstration of seeing how I am mass producing. There we go. There's another one. Perfectly centered. I'm going to drop this one in. Same thing. And stamp it. And you can see how you could cut tons of these, and all you have to do is realign your image wherever it is on the Misti. You can stamp it again. I can keep this template. So here's another one. There we go. So I can keep this template, and then anytime I want to stamp these again, I just throw a piece of white cardstock, stamp it to make sure I have the new position, because you're probably going to take this stamp off and then put it back on later, and it's not going to be exactly the same spot. And then just line up this template again on top, and you've created your little hole to drop your die cut pieces in. So that's the quick and easy way to have perfect die cut images using your Misti. So I hope that helps. Yes, if you need to make 30 or more by the end of the month, definitely. The round thing that I am running over my Misti, this is the Chucky tool. My friend Chuck Meadows, who's a member of our Facebook group, made this for me because I always struggle getting enough pressure. He bought a curtain finial and a furniture protection pad, and then he used Gorilla Glue, and he just glued them together, and he sent it to me. And so you can just rub over the door of your Misti to get a better impression. So, and that's what I was talking about in our group. We've got tons of people who made their own, because Chuck won't make them. He's not selling them. He just did something really nice for me. And of course, I had to show everybody, and then everybody wanted them. So you can understand that, right? Okay, so that's technique 2 of die cutting, easy die cutting. So we have lots of die cut pieces here. And I'm going to use one of these in one of the cards for today. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is a really fun technique where you can cut just part of a die out. So this is called partial die cutting. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, you can use a pencil for this, or you can use an erasable pen. I'm going to use an erasable pen. I have a friction pen. Friction pens are really cool because you can draw, and then they've got this eraser edge, this eraser, and it's not really like a typical eraser, like you can't erase a pencil with this. It creates friction or heat, and it makes the line just disappear. A lot of times seamstresses, people who sew will use this because they can iron it, and the heat from the iron makes it disappear. So, you know, be careful. Don't do it on something that's going to go through a laminator, because it'll just disappear. But it's a great way to mark something up and then get rid of the marks afterwards. They're called friction pens, F-I-R-X-I-O-N. I use them to write inside of my cards when I send cards to people, because if I make a mistake, I can erase it and I can make it look nice. I don't have to scribble. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I have a piece of cardstock that measures, oh, if you freeze it, it comes back? Seriously? Samantha, that's great advice. So if you freeze it, it will come back. Yay! Okay, so they'll get to see all my mistakes. Oh, I hope nobody's going to throw my cards in the freezer now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay this piece of cardstock in my Misti. This measures 4¼ inches by 11 inches. And I'm going to go to the 5½ inch mark, which would be where I would normally fold the card, okay? And then I'm going to use my friction pen, and I'm just going to draw a line. Now, I need that line to know where half of the card is. That's why I do that. And you can do that with a light pencil too. But I don't want to score it, because I'm going to score it later, but not in that spot. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you another little technique. So this is the Zenflowers stamp set. And one of my techniques that I showed in another video was lining up your flowers, especially when they're complicated and they've got lots of petals. So what I highly recommend is finding the spot where you would want to cut these. And this might not be easy to do because there are a lot of petals on this, but I think that's pretty close. That looks pretty good. Okay, so that's the way I would want to use the die. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to put a Sharpie onto the die right there. And I'm going to put a Sharpie dot right on that petal right there. All right. So now I know that I'm going to align my stamp with the dot at the top. And then when I want to cut it out, the dot at the top of the die matches the petal at the top of the stamp. Okay. So I hope that made sense. I think it did. I have not used this stamp before, so this is going to require some conditioning. Now these stamps, you may notice that they don't stamp perfectly the first time. They have a lot of residue on them from the manufacturing process. So what I do is I take my finger and I rub all over this stamp to get that residue off. I think I need Chuck to make a residue remover for me. Chuck Meadows, if you're watching, use your brilliant brain to come up with something for me that does this, because I have to do this on every one of my stamps, but you only have to do it the first time. And then once it's conditioned, it will work every time. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And if it doesn't work, we're going to use the Misti for stamping this anyway, so we can stamp it a second time. After you've stamped these images a couple of times, they'll work fine. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my piece of cardstock down here into the bottom corner. And you can see with the Misti, you can stamp on bigger pieces of cardstock. You don't need a bigger Misti or a bigger platform of any kind to do this. Just make sure that, you know, the part that you're going to stamp on is inside the Misti. It will not be affected by the door, unless you have ink up here on your door. If you have ink up here, clean your Misti first. All right, so I'm going to put this image right near the top. And you can see I am putting my dot at the top as well. So I'm going to remember that once I stamp that, that image that's up at the top is going to line up. That little point is going to line up with this dot on my die. Okay. So did I even center that, or did I just throw it down? I can't even remember. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I want to make sure that my cardstock is tucked in and ready in case I have to restamp. So I'm going to stamp this again with black ink. This might need a second coat, but it's looking pretty good, actually. Okay. So I'm going to stamp that, and I'm going to press it down. Make sure I make good contact with the paper. And that looks great. Okay. So that's good. That's done. And remember, my die is going to fit right up there. Did I line that up wrong? I think I did. I think I put the dot in the wrong place. Let me fix the dot. Okay, so I'm going to move the dot. Now, if you ever put the dot in the wrong place, don't worry. You can use just a little bit. If you don't have this by now, you need to get it right away. This is Purell hand sanitizer. If you put the dot in the wrong place and you want to get it off, just use a little rubbing alcohol, a little Copic marker remover, and you should be able to get that off. It's starting to come off. I have to work on that a little bit. It's actually taking part of my mat off too. Okay, and then I'm going to move that dot over to the next one where it should have been so I can remember next time. Okay, I'm going to put that away, and I will remember that that is the spot, right? That looks like the spot. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to do a little masking, but you don't have to be real super fancy with masking for this. All you need is just a little bit of the image at the bottom. So I'm going to stamp just a little bit of this image at the bottom. Doesn't even have to look great. See, that doesn't look great, but that's all I need. And then I'm going to use a pair of scissors to cut just a couple of these out. I don't even need a lot of them. I just want to cut a couple of these out because I want my stem to go up into the flower. I don't want it just right against the flower because I want it to look like it's coming out from underneath the flower. So just cutting a few points out. Super easy design to fussy cut. And you don't want to cut this with the die because it'll give you the white edge, and you don't want the white edge for this. Okay, so let's see. That'll go about there. I'm going to cut a couple more. And then remember, once you cut this, this is another thing that you can store with your stamps. So I recommend if you're storing your stamps and you're making masks for them and you're making templates to die cut them, think about using our stamping pockets because the stamp pockets hold lots of stuff. I keep my stamps and dies together in one pocket, and that makes it super easy to find everything when I want it. There we go. That's a good spot. So now I'm just going to cut this off there and that off there. And then I didn't cut that all the way because there's plenty of masking magic left to cut another mask on that piece. All right. So now let me move this all out of the way, make my space look pretty with my new glob right there. All right, so now I'm going to peel this. And then I'm going to line it up. Let's see, where I want to line it up. Right there. Right there. Did I cut in the right spot? Yeah, I did. There we go. I really just need to cover those three right there because that's where I'm going to put my stem. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is add my greeting, and I want my greeting to be at the bottom. So I think I'm going to make this a full-blown Thanksgiving card with the Happy Thanksgiving greeting at the bottom. Okay. And I'm going to stamp that. Get my hand sanitizer out of the way. I'm going to stamp that using some black onyx ink. And I know this is a lot of extra stuff, but I really want to show you. You could do this a lot easier if you were just using one big flower with a die, but I want to make a Thanksgiving card here, so I'm going to do it. Okay, Happy Thanksgiving. There we go. Should I stamp that again? I'll stamp it one more time. Yeah, I think any hand sanitizer should work. Alcohol, rubbing alcohol will work, and also Copic marker blending pen will work. It's just something with alcohol to remove the solvent in Sharpie, because that's an alcohol ink. That's what Sharpie markers are. They're alcohol inks. Okay, now it's time to put my stem. Now you can see this is a very long stem, and this is going to come down over my Happy Thanksgiving greeting, which I do not want. So I'm going to take some purple tape, and I'm going to just lay that on top like that, so my stem will not go down that far. I have to move my stem up a little bit so it's in the Misti. But see, it doesn't matter where I put it because that masking paper is going to block it. So now I'm going to ink that up with some black onyx, and I'm going to stamp my stem. Okay, now I can remove this and my greeting. It's not in the way of my greeting. And I'm going to take my mask off, and it's not in the way of my flower. Looking good. Okay, I'm going to add 2 quick leaves onto this. This will probably be like one of the cards that I finish. And then I have one more thing to show you, another die cutting tip. So I'm going to stamp this leaf using some black onyx ink. I'll stamp that here. And I'll stamp the other one. I love this set. My daughter Alicia drew this. And it's such a fun set. It's so Zentangly. Okay. And there's the other leaf. And of course, you can put lots of leaves. You can do whatever you want. But I'm going to stop there for the purpose of this video, this live. Okay, so now we've got our little card. And I am going to get my die cutting machine back here. And I'm going to do some partial die cutting. Okay, so again, I think I have to back up a little bit here so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so now we're going to decide how far down onto this flower that we want the flower to pop up off the top of the card. So I'm going to line the die up first using my little nifty trick here. Okay. And I'm going to use some purple tape to stick it down. Okay. Making sure that that's looking good. Now, if you really want to be precise, you can use a template, which you already know how to do the template thing. You know, you could cut that template out of that lightweight cardstock, not lightweight, but midweight. Okay, and now here's the trick. So I'm going to put this in upside down, and I'm going to cut just to like here. So just the top of this sunflower is going to stick out. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to stick this way into the machine. And then with my second plate, I'm going to choose a spot where it's going to stop. So how about if I go right to there and we'll see how that looks. Okay, it's exciting. Let me see how much card that leaves. That's going to be a tiny, tiny little card at the bottom, but that's okay. All right. So now I'm going to push this all the way through till I feel it, you know, press up against where I need to start rolling. Okay. And then I'm going to start to roll. There we go. Okay. Let's hope I did that right. It's been many years since I've done this technique. Now, I'm going to gently peel. You know, that non-sticky purple tape can get pretty sticky when you press it through a die cutting machine. So you want to take it off very gently. Very gently. Okay. See, I have to be quiet. It's the only time I can't talk is when I'm stressing. Let me see what's happening here. Just part of that flower is sticking up. Okay. All right. Once again, let me get this out of the way. Have you all named your die cutting machine yet? Brina bought she bought herself a KitchenAid mixer and she named it Susan. So she talks to her KitchenAid mixer. I need to name my die cutting machine. So now I'm going to take my friction pen and I'm going to get rid of the purple line because we won't be needing that anymore. And that's just going to be distracting. Okay. And now I'm going to use my score buddy. And I am going to figure out where the line is that I want to bend this card on. All right, let me flip it around here so I can see what I'm doing. So I think I'll go with the 3.5 inch mark. And then where's the 3.5 inch mark? It's right here. There we go. So I'm scoring up to the flower on both sides. And now I'm going to fold that, and you see the flower is sticking up outside of the card. Isn't that cute? That's just so cute and happy. Now I'm going to cut the bottom off, and so I can save this for another card. So I'm just going to line it up down at the bottom. And now my card should fit into an A2 size envelope because I measured what an A2 size card would be with that purple line ahead of time. So now I can use a regular A2 size envelope for my card, and that'll fit in there. And then when they open it up, so if you look at it from the back, it has an opening there. And there are things that you can do if you want. You can put another piece inside to hide that, just put a little piece of craft cardstock inside to hide it. But what I think is kind of cute is you can write your whole message even over the flower if you want, and then just pop it up, and then they have to put it back together to read your message. But there is no problem with taking another piece of cardstock and just taping it in there the same exact size as whatever you have left, and then that will hide the hole on the inside. So just trim that off. I would stick it in there, trim it off, and then it will be the right size so that when you open the card, you just tape that down in there. So you guys get the idea of that, right? So is that fun? Just a fun little partial die cutting. Okay, so that's called partial die cutting. So let me put this aside. And I think what I'm going to do with this card is I'm going to color everything with a white pencil. And it's just going to be a real cool, neutral kind of card. So I'll work on that later, and then I'll share the picture of this later in our Facebook group. All right, let me put that aside. Now, I have another card idea for you. It's another fancy fold. And I'm going to start, or a fancy die cut, rather, but it starts with a fancy fold. So we'll use the craft cardstock again, because that seems to be working really well for us. Now, this piece of cardstock measures 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So this is the half sheet cut the other way. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to score it at 2 1/8 inch on one side. So that's 2 1/4. So this is the 2 1/8 inch mark. And then I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to score it again at 2 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And then when I fold that together, it will meet in the center. So that's still an A2 size card, but it's meeting in the center instead of being a side fold or a top fold. Now I want to really press down my score lines here. Okay, so there we have it. Now I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to start by stamping a background stamp on it. Hold on, guys. The camera's coming back. I know it went black for a second, but I'm back. Woohoo! We're still having that trouble, but it's not happening enough that we can figure out what it is yet, but we are working on it. Okay, so I'm going to just take a piece of cardstock. Well, that doesn't fit. I'm going to cut this piece of cardstock down. And I know somebody asked when we're getting the cutters back in. And again, they've been out of stock for a while at our suppliers. So as soon as they come in, we will get them back in, and we highly recommend that you just click the notify me button so you're the first to know when they come back in. Okay, so I just cut this down so it's just about the same size as the card, and then I'm going to just fold that in half like that. And the reason I'm doing that is because there is a little seam in there, and I don't want ink to get inside. All right, so now I'm going to ink this stamp up with some warm cocoa ink. Tom can get the camera working so fast when it goes out. Thank you, Tom. Can you say hi to everybody? Oh, you did? Oh, good. Okay. So I'm inking up. This is our Petite Flourish background stamp. And I thought this one looked really good for autumn because it's very viney and it kind of works with pumpkins. So now I'm going to lay this down on top. And then I hope I didn't just mess that up. But if I did, it's okay. And then I'm going to put a piece of cardstock on top and I'm going to rub all over the surface. I could probably use my Chucky tool for this. Oh my gosh, Chuck, look. I'm doing it with this. That's so cool. And that just makes really good contact with the paper. And then you can see now I've got that beautiful pattern all over the front of my cardstock, but not on the back. So made my own little pattern paper top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my, let's see, how do I want to do this? I think what I want to do is I want to first, this is going to go inside my card. This is just a little piece of black and white cardstock that will just go in and be kind of the surprise in the center. I'll put that aside for now, though. I don't need to do that right away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of those pumpkins. And I want to have a window of just the pumpkins going across. And then I think I'll put it up a little bit high because then inside I'm going to have the pumpkins. And I'm going to use this stamp set by Emily Loggins. This is called Hey Boo. And I'm going to put the Hey There Pumpkin greeting on the inside of the card. Okay. So what I want to do here is I want to line this up where I want it. And I think for this, I'm going to have to use some purple tape. But before I get started, I should probably bring the die cutting machine over because I'm going to have everything all held together and then I won't have the machine over here. So we'll make it easier for me. Okay. So again, I have my one plate, the big plate, and then one of the clear plates. And I'm going to figure out where I want this to go. So I'm going to go just a little bit higher up. And I'm going to tape it down there. And tape it down here. Okay.
Background stamp is that?
This is the Petite Flourish background stamp. Now I'm opening it up and I'm going to lay it into the die cutting machine. And then I'm going to put the other plate on there. And I'm going to cut half of it. I guess I can push it all the way through. There we go. Now, again, I have to be very careful pulling this purple tape off. I do not want to tear my cardstock. There we go. It's letting go pretty good. Okay. So now I have half of my window. Okay. So now, put this back. Now I'm going to snap that die back into space over here. And then I'm going to purple tape down the other side. So you want to make sure that that's right in that spot and that the card is folded. You can feel it drop down into the hole you just made. And we're going to tape that down. Oops, I need more than one piece of purple tape. And if your purple tape isn't sticking enough because your ink is a little wet, you can always use some washi tape, but I definitely would tap that off on my sweater first. Okay, so that's in place. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lay the plate down and I'm going to send it through the machine. And if all goes as planned, I should have row of 3 pumpkin openings across my card. Okay, careful, careful. There we go. So there is my opening for my card. I've got the 3 pumpkins across the top. All right. So now I'm going to put this aside. And let's zoom in a bit here. I want to go back and really press that down. And also, I'm going to grab some ribbon. Let me grab my ribbon. You can make a belly band for this using cardstock, or you can make a ribbon belly band, whatever you want. You can make 2, one for the top, one for the bottom, however you want to do it. I think I'm just going to use some ribbon because it's here and it's easy. So I'm going to adhere these 2 panels together. These I just cut out by hand with a paper cutter, but if you want it to be really cute, you can use the Master Layouts dies and have the decorative edge. Use the Master Layouts 2 for this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. You guys can see what I'm doing. Okay. And then this is going to go right in the center of my card on the inside. I want to space it out so it's even. Okay. Got that? Okay, now I'm going to place this image. I'm going to hold this down, and then I'm going to place this image where I want it by putting it through the window. Okay, like that. I want to make sure it's in the right spot so this can open and close. So that is where I'll be taping it down. And then when it closes, you'll still be able to see the pumpkins through it. Everybody's rushing me? Okay. So I'm going to do that next. You can also do that with foam squares, which would really be fun. Let's try that. So Louise, what are they saying? I just looked up and I see you telling them to be patient, that I'll get there. What am I doing? What am I doing too slowly? And thank you for instructing patience, because we're not worrying tonight, remember? We're not worrying. Okay, so now I have my foam squares here, and I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to mess around with it. Excuse my head if it's in the way, but I really need to see straight down on this one. That should work. There we go. This is always the tricky part in an intricate design like this, is getting that to work. But there we go. Okay. So now, here we go. Cute. Okay, so I'm going to open this up again, and I'm going to get my Misti, and I'm going to stamp my Hey Pumpkin greeting. And you know, you can stamp your Misti both ways, right? You guys know that. You can turn it sideways if you have a big card spread like I have here. And hey there, pumpkin. This is another image that I have not used yet, so it's going to require a little bit of prep. Yes, the masking magic that I used, if somebody was asking about that, that is Gina K Designs masking magic. It is a product that we worked on together with ThermoWeb. So you know, ThermoWeb's adhesives are so awesome. Okay, so we'll do Hey There Pumpkin. Put that up high like that. I'm gonna make sure the hey there is straight. When you're doing anything with a scriptiness to it, if it's got letters that are straight, like regular letters that aren't scripty, use those as your guide for straightness. Okay, I want to make sure that I didn't move that now. That should look pretty good. Okay. Hang on. We're back. All right, so I'm going to ink this up here. Looking good. And then I'm going to stamp it down here. Definitely going to use my Chucky tool. Okay. Yes, look how cute that is. Put that out of the way. So here is that card. I really like the black and white. I got all these markers out ready to color, but I really think it's cute with the black and white. So that's just a fun little, and you can use the, kind of stick it underneath to help it stay closed. You can always use that. And then I'm going to make a little quick belly band for it to hold it together down here. I probably should have cut that just a little bigger, but I'll struggle. I will struggle bus here. Nothing like tying a bow in front of 2,600 people, trying to make it look good. Not bad. Not bad for the stress. Okay, and then I will cut this side on an angle. And I will cut this side on an angle. Down here. Is that a good spot? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Close enough for jazz. So there's my finished card. And then you take it and you take the little belly band off and then you pop it open. Hey there, pumpkin. Cute. All right. So I'll try to get a picture of this as well. I am tempted to color it, but... And then if you want to put the belly band back on, just curl it a little bit. You can curl it either inward, like that, or backward. And then that little belly band will slip back on there. But that is just how you do a gatefold die cut. So we have the gatefold. It doesn't want to stay. We'll just pick him up and seal it there. We have the gatefold. We have the partial die cutting topper card. I definitely think that this one needs to be colored in white. And we have our other little techniques of die cutting all these little bits and pieces. So hopefully you learned some tips and tricks for die cutting tonight. Was that fun? I had so much fun. I had lots of fun. All right. Yay. Well, I hope you guys went on a worry fast with me, a little taking a break from worry and enjoying a little bit of die cutting techniques. So I do have a final quote for you guys tonight, and just keep this in mind as we navigate the next few weeks. If your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will be back on Wednesday, and let me let you in on a little secret. Wednesday, we have a brand new kit coming out with ThermoWeb. It's going to all be on the ThermoWeb website, and that's where you can get it. And that'll be on Wednesday. It's going to come out around 10 a.m. Central Time. I'm so excited about this. I designed this kit for ThermoWeb, and I cannot wait for you to see it. And on Wednesday night, I'm going to use the kit to make a few projects. So I hope that you will join me. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.